Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is Brock Beard from LastCar.info coming at you for a special Monday edition of Behind the Wall, where we just come at you after the conclusion of the Crayon 301 at New Hampshire, where, pending the results of post-race inspection, Martin Truex Jr. has scored his first Cup win at Loudon, a racetrack that he's been trying to win for many years, led more than 900 laps, broke the 1,000 lap mark today en route to victory, had easily the best car out there, but it was not as easy as it looked. Certainly some strategy came into play. Had to deal with his teammate as well, and Christopher Bell, although he had some bad luck there towards the end. I just want to say right off the bat, congratulations to Last Pro, who picked Truex to win there and is just now still up at the track there this weekend. So it sounds like he had a great time up there. And it was a great crowd to really see at the track this weekend. It looked like there was a lot of people up there for a Monday, given what was some torrential rain that's been rolling through there, really, especially from yesterday. So good to see a good turnout for that. I think the fans up there certainly seem like they're very passionate about the racing up there, of course, with the North Series and the modifieds and everything else through there. But I've already seen some complaints about this race being boring. I thought it was pretty good. I mean, I actually just finished watching 2001 spring race at Darlington last night for a video I'm working on, and this one had at least as much intrigue as that race did, between people, different strategies and so forth. I think that much more of the stories could have been brought up, a little bit better. I think one thing for sure, the last place battle had a little bit of a twist to it there, when you had Corey LaJoie bounce off the wall about the same time that Kyle Busch did. LaJoie going behind the wall for 120 laps, the broadcast declaring him out immediately, which is not unprecedented. I remember Stenhouse had a similar situation at Sears Point a couple years ago, and they declared him out even though they were still working on the car, and ultimately did send him back out. But the Spire Motorsports team getting him out in the 35th spot, and did actually get up to the 33rd at the very end of this, past Eric Almirola with about 8 laps to go here to gain a couple of different spots. So again, congratulations to that team, and really showing some endurance in the face of some adversity through this race as well. Going into our last place battle, we'll definitely talk about that here. Kyle Busch has his 11th last place finish of his Cup career, unofficially, pending the results of post-race inspection. Had a pretty rough weekend on all fronts, bounced off the wall in practice and then hit it harder in qualifying in the second round, resulting in some repairs that had to send him to the back of the field. Busch was interviewed after his accident, reporting that he had problems with the right rear wheel, not feeling like it was in contact with the track surface, and ended up finishing well back in the order there, not gaining a whole lot of spots in the early laps, to be sure there as well. While the last place battle was looking to go to BJ McLeod, who was your last place finisher in this race last year, Kyle Busch, however, bounced off the wall, really did some heavy damage to the right rear of the car and the right front. The team then discovered that the suspension was very seriously damaged, sent him back out for another lap when the car was smoking, and ended up going back to the garage area. Corey LaJoie had bounced off the wall in a separate incident a couple seconds after Busch's wreck, and also went to pit road, but never fell off the lead lap until he actually went to the garage area a couple laps later. There was a miscommunication. It seems like both the team and NASCAR was a little bit caught off guard as to what the status of the 7 team was as well. You had LaJoie actually going to the garage area, was declared going to the garage under mechanical and not a DVP situation, which meant that they were allowed to complete repairs. However, right before he went to the garage, it was later showed that he actually bounced off the wall again in turns 3 and 4. And I guess if NASCAR wanted to be real sticklers about their DVP rule, they could have had that restart the clock, and they would have had to complete repairs, and going to the garage would have actually taken him out of the race. So a lot of different layers to a story that was just, somebody well at the back of the field. And it really shows that there's a whole lot that can happen in a race, even if maybe it's not the most competitive race up front. But I think there was plenty enough going on in this one here, and Truex definitely had the best car, and it's good to see the best car win. It doesn't always happen, but in this case, it certainly did, and I think it was a fine showing there from the team, not without the traditional drama that we usually see with multiple restarts at the end there. And again, to put a bow on the deal there with LaJoie, I was pleased during the broadcast here that they initially declared LaJoie was out of the race, and then they made the correction. They followed up on the story and went from there. They didn't follow up when he actually got back on the track. That would have been nice, but they at least showed that the team was still working on it. I feel like Fox has kind of let that slip through one way or the other there. So it's, again, a good improvement there from the NBC group there, especially when they were running around with the statistic about him finishing, not getting a DNF this year and correcting that. So I appreciate that was handled quite well in this race. But again, looking at the race results here at the top of the field, Martin Truex, your winner. Joey Logano in the second spot. Just talking with Lastbro here, it sounds like there was a sizable contingent of Logano fans at the track there. I expected this to be more of a Truex country there for this, but maybe that's more of a Dover thing. But Truex over Logano. Kyle Larson in the third spot. Not a track that he's traditionally been that good at, although the Chip Ganassi ride that he had before was usually pretty good here, even with guys like Juan Pablo Montoya and Jamie McMurray and others before. But Larson still a third place finish. Kevin Harvick tried to do some tire strategy there at the end to have the lead. He only slipped back to fourth ultimately, which is certainly going to help him in the points, but not in a situation where he could win his way into the playoffs here. That's certainly the goal, I imagine, the rest of this year for his Forever Tour. But this is a track that Harvick has historically performed very well at, right up there with tracks like Phoenix and so forth. But in this case here, still a fine run for him. Brad Keselowski in fifth. First race for the Build Submarines sponsorship there. A fine showing for him. Keselowski seems like he's really knocking on the door to actually kind of break through with one of these wins. As was brought up in the broadcast, it would have been significant for him to pull it off here, being close to where, of course, the Boston Red Sox and the Fenway Group are, and them being still investors in RFK Racing. Tyler Reddick takes home sixth. Denny Hamlin in seventh. Bubba Wallace in eighth, coming back for some issues on pit road. Austin Dillon in ninth, who led for a portion of this race, trying to stretch his fuel and take the lead that way there. Didn't work out for him, but still was able to recover with a solid finish. Chase Briscoe rounding out the top 10. I think a much-needed top 10, not just for the Stewart-Haas effort, but to get a couple of their cars up there with both Briscoe and Harvick in the top 10. Fine showing for them, too. And then Eric Jones just outside the top 10. Chase Elliott. Dale Jr. predicting that this is now the turning point where Chase absolutely needs to win to make the playoffs. I think we probably crossed that river probably a few races ago, but either way, I think the circumstance doesn't change, and it's going to be interesting here, given the fact that not all of these races are ones that you would traditionally expect Elliott to perform well at. Yes, he did inherit the win at Pocono last year, but it took the disqualification of two Gibbs cars for that to happen. So we'll see what happens there. Michael McDowell will look pretty good out there, getting a 13th place finish. Alex Bowman coming back from a spin near the end, and Chris Buescher rounding out the top 15. So fine showings for a lot of them. Another driver I was very impressed with was Harrison Burton, working his way through the pack there. Ends up taking the 20th spot there at the finish. Made some pretty bold moves there towards the end. And kudos to NBC or USA in this case. For showing some of the battles that were happening back there as well. Ty Gibbs ended up grinding the wall towards the end, which is unfortunate. I was looking forward to seeing him kind of climb back up there after the issues he had in qualifying, but he ends up in 27th, the last car on the lead lap. Ryan Preece was in the lucky dog spot when the race concluded there. Some very hard hits for a couple of drivers here, not just hits to the wall, but also kind of frustrations there. Loose wheels. Seemed to be a situation for both Noah Gragson and Eric Almirola. Almirola having the lead at one point, looking to bounce back and take another win at this track after winning here as darkness approached a couple years ago. Looked like he was in position to maybe make something happen up there, but unfortunately the right rear wheel came loose, pulled him right into the outside wall, and knocked him out of the race, finishing in the 34th spot, just ahead of Cole Custer and Kyle Busch. And as documented earlier, LaJoie did climb past Almirola there in the final laps. The other very hard hit was to Noah Gragson, similar to his situation that he had back at Gateway with the very hard hit that eliminated him from being able to start the following race at Sonoma. Gragson ends up back in the 32nd spot. Luckily, it didn't look like as hard of a hit, but still did some heavy damage to the right side of the Sunseeker Resorts machine And, again, I'm sure he's looking for just any solid runs he can get. I know that he was very outspoken on social media, last week after the video that was posted about him just kind of looking for other hobbies and just kind of trying to distract himself from it. And this tweet actually kind of got a lot of traction this past week, and I'm kind of glad that it did. I actually saw Gregson even liked it after I posted my comment on it, showing that, again, Gregson isn't unusual in this case. I mean, it's so different now. The difference between the Cup car and the Xfinity car is so massive these days that it's really not the same situation. It's not entirely unpredictable that a driver could be so dominant in the Xfinity Series, championship contender, making it to the championship 4, this great rivalry with Ty Gibbs, and now both of them get to the Cup Series, and that's going to be a big storyline. Again, it's these cars are radically different, and the teams that both drivers drive for now are very different. The gap between the Joe Gibbs effort and the Legacy Motor Club was really made apparent in these first few races here, and it's been a struggle for him. But again, it's not an unusual situation. There's been stories of other rookies that struggled. I talked about Kenny Irwin in 3 before February. The struggles that he had there, and that in 2000, before we sadly lost him at New Hampshire in 2000, he was kind of regrouping and trying to, start over at the Sabco effort there. Now, he still struggled that season as well, but again, maybe things were starting to turn around. He had the top 5 at Talladega. If things would have, it kind of, similar to this team at Legacy Motor Club, a transition between manufacturers, and Sabco is between Chevy and Dodge, and here it's between Chevy and Toyota. Again, you just got to kind of put together the best runs you can. And I know these drivers have high expectations for themselves, especially when they get up there, and the media is always going to be focusing on all this. But he's not unusual. You think of Rob Moroso. I know a lot of people always talk about, of course, the way that he lost his life. But what led to the drunk driving accident that he had was he was depressed about his performance that season, and he really had people that were reaching out to him and making sure that his mental state was in the right position. And sadly, it didn't work out for him. But again, it was another driver that if people were more aware of what he was dealing with and everything, that that these are things that other rookies go through, and these are just stories that we know about for all intents and purposes. Rookies that struggled in different eras could have dealt with things in very different ways as well. So I think, again, in the fact that drivers have gone through these things before, that Gregson isn't unusual in this case, and certainly hoping, for things to turn around for him. But I like that he's still very positive with the fans, very engaged with them there, and hopefully things will certainly work out for him going forward. But we'll find out. We'll see how things go at Pocono in these stretch run races into the playoffs there. So, and again, I know these may not sound like the best examples to compare it to, but again, these are back in times where you had rookies that had all kinds of things to deal with. Jerry Nadeau was, my favorite driver, back in the late 90s for the same reason, that he was struggling with this team at the Elliott Marino effort. And ultimately, when he did see it through and, was switched between any number of different rides, he found his way over to Hendrick and had, the greatest runs of his career. So I think there's another example of, that kind of endurance there too. If Gregson were racing in any other era, he probably would have been swapped from one team to another. It was very common back then. Talking about the Morgan McClure effort back in 2001 that kind of came up in one of the videos I'm working on there. They're talking about switching out drivers like 3 or 4 races in the season. We really don't see that really anymore with the charter system being what it is. Usually a driver, no matter how difficult of a year they're having, they kind of just stay in that ride to the end of the year. The only time we really see drivers swapped in is, in a case of an injury or some kind of emergency, or certainly as Gregson has faced, as well as Chase Elliott, Alex Bowman, and others. But that seems to be much more common these days. So, as to which one is better, it's hard to say. Certainly for Nadu's case, trying to hop between different teams, going over to the Melling Racing team and then going over to MB2 Motorsports, it could be a real challenge too. And you're not guaranteed to have much better runs with a different organization. Then you go even further back in the sports history, used to have series champions that would drive for multiple different teams. But that's just a different circumstance from what we have these days. But still pulling for Gragson and hoping he just has the best year that he can. And just, again, brighter days are coming. It's not like you suddenly lose that talent and ability that you have from a year earlier. Sometimes some of these rookies just have a real rough road up the ranks. And not all of them have handled it the best way. And I think that in some cases, those could be cautionary tales. And in others, it could be a source of inspiration. But in either way, I think it's something that will hopefully be something that you can work towards too. And really, Ty Gibbs, I don't think is really avoided all of those pitfalls either. He's had more consistent runs. We've seen him almost in the top 16 really last week. But again, struggled last week in Atlanta, had another difficult run here today. They're having problems even with all the equipment that Gibbs has. And that's where, the 42 team's heading next year with the Toyota affiliation. So, again, it's just going to be a matter of adjusting to this car and adjusting your driving style. But, knowing that you have the talent to get there, I think is an important thing to look at. With Martin Truex, only touched on this a little bit, but I definitely want to hammer this a lot more. Massive for him to be able to win at what's basically his home track. I mean, Dover gets much more the credit, especially since it was the scene of his first Cup win in 2007. But also, again, his father, Martin Sr., running out here. He and his brother Ryan running out there and running so many races in the East Series and so forth. I mean, this is just huge, and I'm glad that USA still brought up that story enough that it's not simply a matter of a driver that's come so close to winning here this many times and leading this many laps, but also because it has some significance to his family and his family's history. And that's kind of what I was bringing up last week with the Atlanta broadcast, the concerns over a more transactional approach towards broadcast. I feel that really this was, I felt that they were actually kind of a little bit more sensitive to kind of the human aspect of these drivers, a little bit more. Sometimes I think in this case here, they were more caught off guard by just stuff that was happening on the track. So you can't lose sight of that either. So it's a delicate balance though. But I thought that was covered pretty well. And I like that, they were having fun with, the lobster and Victory Lane and all that as well. They should. It's a quirky aspect of pulling off a win here and should certainly be a big part of that too. But looking again here at the results, any other names that stand out from this? Allmendinger came back from his spin in the early laps there to finish in the 19th spot. Ross Chastain was shoved out of the groove and was 23rd. Looking at BJ McLeod, again, the last car, I believe he was the last car running, but still climbed up to 31st there. Ended up 6 laps down by the finish. Ryan Newman was a couple laps down. He was basically on the same lap as Christopher Bell was. Heartbreak there for the number 20. Of course, wearing the shirt today because he was my fantasy pick for today. Did not quite work out as well as expected there after winning the pole there the other day. But again, as well as Bell has performed at New Hampshire these number of years, not just in the Cup Series and the Xfinity, but also the Xfinity Series and I guess even the Truck Series. Again, it's the streak can't last forever, and this was certainly the case this time around here. Ryan Blaney looked good until strategy didn't quite work out his way. Blaney ends up in the 22nd spot. Looked like he was going to have the measure of Truex at one point there, but didn't quite work out that way there too. But again, I was entertained. I've seen way more boring races than this, folks. I'll tell you what. And I'm glad they didn't try to squeeze this in on Sunday with the rain in the area. I know there's a lot of criticism about calling the race as early as they did, but you really have to keep in mind, the track doesn't have lights. It's a flat track, which is very, very difficult to drive because you don't have banking to kind of help slough that water off anywhere. If they got any racing in, they're going to be racing darkness. Yes, if they do have the wet weather tires for the flat tracks, but do you really want people out there just to see what would have been probably a race to halfway, if that, with the weather being as serious as it was. I mean, it was massive. Talking with Laspro on this, yeah, it just rolled through there out of nowhere. Like on Friday, it was fine. Or on Saturday it was fine, and then on Sunday it rolled through, and it's just the bottom fell out. So I think, as much as I hate it for people that, because I know not everybody's able to stay the next day, and that's always the real heartbreaker too. You got people out there that are photographers, media members, people who work with tracks, or just the fans themselves can't take the extra day. That's a real rough deal there, and it shouldn't be done lightly. But the fact that it was done so quickly, I think, was ultimately a beneficial deal. I'd rather have that than people just sitting in the stands, just getting relentlessly rained on, especially for, how serious the rain had been. So I think that was the right call. Would this have been the same call from one race to the next? Well, you really can't have a copy and paste approach to rain, because again, we saw this last week in Atlanta. You got a track that has lights, you got a track that has banking, and you got a race where the rain is coming in a certain way that, that you're going to be able to get at least half the race, or you're pretty sure you're going to be able to. And that's ultimately what happened there. So, again, it's a difficult situation for everybody involved. There's a lot of moving pieces these teams have to figure out. But again, I'll give NASCAR the benefit of the doubt on this, because I think that was probably the best circumstance they could do. It wasn't like it stopped raining at noon. They could have dried the track by like 2 PM and maybe gotten it in at that point. That did not seem to be the case. It's so frustrating though. At the same time, I get the frustration overall, because here it is, the summer stretch, and it seems like every single one of these races, especially after Sears Point, has been affected by rain. It's just like every week, whether it's a washed out qualifying session or a practice session or a race getting now postponed to another day, which has been thankfully pretty rare. But more so, races being delayed or pushed later in the day or cut to halfway. I don't know if it's just the region that they're in, but it seems like it doesn't really matter. Kind of like the Comics by Bruno illustration from this past week. If this sport shows up and the clouds just go right with them, and that's just kind of where it is. Hopefully we don't see that in Pocono. Hopefully whatever the storm is that's blowing through there that did yesterday is not going to be as much of an issue in Pennsylvania. But we'll find out, because I think they're going to have a very interesting week next week with the Truck Series coming back, as well as Xfinity and Cup for their weekend out there. So we'll find out. Let me jump into the Xfinity Series race as well. This being back over on Saturday, talking about that. Congratulations to John Hunter Nemechek. You want to talk about another driver in team, driver in particular, that has a familial interest in the Loudon track. Look no further than John Hunter. I still don't get why he is so completely overlooked in the Xfinity Series Championship this year. The man just keeps winning and winning and just cruising here. And I keep hearing, Cole Custer is the best guy in the Xfinity Series. And then Cole Custer causes this wreck at the end of the race while John Hunter Nemechek pulls off the win. It's like, well, okay, can the narrative change now? I think it should at this point here. He wins at the track where Joe Nemechek made his first Cup start, won his first Cup win in 1999, driving for Sabatas in the 42 car. And pulls off the victory. I was a little surprised that John Hunter himself didn't really bring that up, but I'm sure it was on his mind. It probably came up in the media interviews afterwards there. But again, I think that's a track that has a lot of significance there in the Nemechek family. Or at least, again, at least statistically it does. Maybe they don't think anything of it, but I think that probably when they go back and look at the footage and think back to those races in the past there, that win will be even more significant than mere positioning in the playoffs or constructing new narratives around different drivers that are championship contenders. But congratulations to John Hunter pulling off the victory there. Chandler Smith in second, Austin Hill third, Daniel Hemrick fourth, and Sammy Smith taking the fifth spot there. Some fine runs again for some underdogs, although many other underdogs did struggle in this race. Mason Massey broke into the top 10. A little bit of a controversy there over how the field was frozen there with the wrecks at the very end of the race. It originally looked like Patrick Emmerling would have his first top 10, which was thrilling enough given how well he performed, at least in practice, for the modifieds at New Hampshire this week. Emmerling still credited with a 14th place finish, which is still his career best finish in the Xfinity Series, so congratulations to him. But Massey and the SS Greenlight effort was a tremendous effort for them as well. I'm glad to see that team do a turnaround because they are pretty much the leaders in the NASCAR Xfinity Owners Championship this year. Both the 07 and the 08 have had terrible luck here with any number of different drivers. I don't know what ladder they walked under this year, but that's kind of been the situation with those guys. So to see Massey come from 33rd on the grid to finish 10th is a tremendous accomplishment. And Josh Williams with back-to-back top 10s. Not the first time he's done that. I believe he did that back in 2020. But again, a great 8th place run there for him. Still getting some very deserved attention out there. Just outside the top 10, Alex Labay flying the flag for Canada there, finishing in the 12th spot there for Mario Gosselin's team. Again, another driver that, and in another car without any sponsorship on it. This summer, Labay has driven any number of different cars between DGM and RSS and has consistently shown, whether it's a road course or an oval, that he's capable of getting up there and at least earning a really solid finish. Any company that's worth their salt should jump on board and sponsor him. Heck, I would if I could. But we've already exhausted our sponsorship budget this year. But that was a hopefully things turn around for him, at least on the sponsorship front, and he could get a more consistent ride. Certainly runs like that are going to make him very deserving of those. Your last place battle in this one here, again, some heartbreak there for Greg Van Alst, who now becomes the first Xfinity Series driver to finish last in his first 2 series starts. Now, that goes back to 1982 and the reincorporation of the what is now the Xfinity Series after what was the Sportsman Series there going into that season. But going over the statistics there, that is the first time that's happened, including the first 2 races ever run in the Xfinity Series there. But unfortunate for Greg Van Alst. I mean, again, it's I don't know what was going on there with him, but they had all kinds of problems with the brakes on the car. He dropped to the back of the field in the very early laps, pulled into the garage area. Team just wasn't able to make the repairs on that. And then at almost the same moment, his teammate Raja Carruth starts erupting in smoke. An oil line comes loose after a Wiggins clamp comes off. I'm trying to remember the last time this happened, because I remember that we've had a situation like this in NASCAR competition before, but a driver losing a Wiggins clamp it seems like the entire oil system is hooked together by these little clamps, because when it happens, I think it's just as catastrophic as it happened before. I think it was Timmy Hill at Michigan when he drove for Premium Motorsports and he got parked because he was leaking fluid on the track. I think that was the situation. But it sounds familiar because he just dumping that much fluid and you just lose everything. Like they literally had to hustle up bottles of oil from the Richard Childress teams there to try to get Carruth's car back out there. And much like we saw with Spire Motorsports today and Corey LaJoie, the Alpha Prime effort was working their tails off to get that 44 car back out there, especially when you had a big pile up on the front straightaway that collected about 9 cars and eliminated a few of those. They were really working their butts off to try to get Carruth back out there. And certainly for the experience that Carruth is looking to get there in the Xfinity Series, as he looks to kind of make that jump for how good he's been in the Truck Series already, is just a rough deal there. But the fact that the results will show 47 laps completed and oil line failure is the reason the last place finish will not reflect how hard that team was working to get both their cars out there, but especially Carruth's. They spent probably about half the race there trying to get him back out. Unfortunately, it wasn't the result there. But again, I think this is a good weekend that shows the importance of these storylines that happen in the back of the field there, that it isn't just about what happens up front. You could have a driver that's, dominant that wins a race one day, and they'll be on my page the next day because that's just the nature of racing. You can have a mechanical issue, get caught up in somebody's wreck, and then suddenly it's just a completely different circumstance that way there. But Carruth next to last. Stephen Parsons, the bad luck not entirely gone away for SS Greenlight. He in the 07 car had a suspension issue, was working, I believe it was a sway bar issue, not a track bar issue. that I first indicated. So a sway bar issue on that that dropped him back in the order. Sounded like they were going to come back out, but ultimately didn't. Chad Fincham had an issue on pit road. The car stranded out there and ended up finishing in the bottom 5. And Anthony Alfredo was one of the many drivers involved in that big wreck off of turn number 4 that caused a big stack up there in front of the field. But regardless, he ends up in the bottom 5 there. Ryan Sieg, once again, just cannot buy a break. They fixed the car after an incident in practice that collected him and Kaz Gralla. Comes back out there looking to get a decent finish. Ends up just collected in another wreck here. And much like the disappointment that he had back in Atlanta last week, when he was actually leading laps in that event, just a difficult situation there on that end. Looking at the results of the other drivers back here, Parker Retzlaff involved in a late race accident there when he was trying to climb back into contention. Joe Graff Jr., congrats to him for actually leading some laps in this race and really trying to show, just a better run than he had back at Richmond. The last time he drove the Joe Gibbs Racing injury, he had all kinds of handling problems. Was spinning out by himself, not being able to keep up the pace there, and undoubtedly a frustrating situation for a driver that already has just some difficult runs for whatever team he's been driving for. But trying to capitalize on this run as best he could. Got up there, got to lead some laps. Unfortunately gets caught up in a wreck off of turn 2, stoves in the nose of his car. Wasn't the only driver involved. I mean, the Sam Mayer situation there when Mayer spun, collected a few. Connor Mosack got the nose punched in on his car as well. Seemed like it collected a lot of Toyotas in that one. But that was kind of the situation there for drivers in the back of the field. We'll see how that shakes out for the playoffs coming up here as well. But that'll be something to find out at Pocono in these next couple of races coming up here as well. But again, congratulations to John Hunter Nemechek. Much like back at Dover, where you had Ryan Truex finally break through and get his first Xfinity win the same weekend that Martin wins on a Monday. And I guess Martin is the new Monday master here, pulling off this win here as well in New Hampshire. You have kind of the familial connection there between both the win here on Sunday for Truex and Nemechek's on Saturday. So I'd say a pretty solid weekend of racing here. I did not see the SRX race earlier this week, nor the IndyCar race at Toronto. But again, congratulations to Christian Lundgaard as pulling off his first victory in Toronto. If you haven't checked out the article by our William Saki, he already posted that yesterday. And did some coverage there on the last place finisher of that as well. A bit of a bookending for the same country there with Benjamin Peterson, finishing in last place in that. And if you haven't checked out the article on that, that's already available on lastcar.info. The article for the Cup Series race will be up a bit later today, pending the results of post-race inspection. So hopefully we'll have some more updates on that. So a little bit of a shorter show here today, folks, especially on a Monday. But I do appreciate you guys tuning in. We'll do a little bit of trivia here, and I got I have something for show and tell here. I'm already seeing some questions from other videos that I'm working on, so I'll follow up on that at the exact same time here too. Actually, let me go ahead and just jump right into that now, because I've already mentioned this with the Patreon the other night. So at the moment here, I still have 3 videos that I'm working on. I got a question about 500 days. That is one of them. Just last night, I was watching the 2001 spring race at Darlington, which I touched on earlier. And that is really the last race review that I wanted to add for this episode. It's going to cover the Truck Series, Busch Series, and Cup Series from in and around that middle March weekend there when the Cup Series was at Darlington. And we'll have a full review of that. So that's one of the scripts I'm working on. It's pretty much ready to be revised. I still want to clean that one up. Same thing with the next episode of Rise of the Field Fillers on Mach 1 Incorporated. I've already integrated Larry Gunselman's interview into it. I just wrote an opening to that, I think 2 days ago. So that one's about ready to be edited. And then a standalone video on Chuck Bown is also very close to being recorded. I think that one of the 3 scripts is probably the closest to being recorded, so I'll probably be recording that one first and getting that one going. So that'll most likely be the next video that's released, but we're very close to getting all those out. The plan is to kind of try to stack up as many of these as possible and then get these releases out a bit quicker. So there's a lot more content coming to this YouTube channel very soon. So definitely stay tuned on that at the same time. I just want to check something else on my feed here. I hope you guys like that didn't need to be a caution graphic that made its debut here today. I made that a couple weeks ago. It seemed like it was something that happens so often that it pretty much needs a new expansion there of the library that's included the last place changes and so forth here along the way. Looking back here, I want to give a special shout out here to everybody that was sharing pictures from this weekend. We had a large contingent of people following last place action, not just Last Bro himself there, who was over towards the turn 1 side of the track, but also Easy Bass 42 on Twitter, as well as DM_00514. Big thanks to both of them for contributing pictures from the grandstands. Steven Stumpf also out there for front stretch, provided some great shots from in the garage area this weekend. Big thanks to all of them for their contributing material this weekend. It really helps put these articles together, and we're pretty much ready to go the moment that technical inspection clears on this. So we'll have some more updates on that very soon. So we'll see. Let me go ahead and jump into, I'm going to get my feed up here. I don't have the second screen hooked up here today. I want to kind of just jump into the show here on this. But I'll get the Pocris feed pulled up here, and we'll see if we have any updates on that. It'll probably be a little while till we get inspections. Oh, looks like Michael McDowell and Ryan Preece were a little upset with each other at the end. That's a bit interesting. Truex, how many laps did Truex actually lead? 254 of 301 laps, led 5 times, swept both the first 2 stages like he did last year. But unlike last year, did not get the win handed over to his teammate, Christopher Bell. But this time around, we'll see what the results are of inspection. Of course, that was a big issue in the Xfinity race last year. I believe he had a double disqualification with Gregson and Castle in the Xfinity race last year. So that'll be another one to look at. So we'll see what happens. We'll hopefully have the results of inspection on the show here tonight. But otherwise, we'll have updates on that a bit later on here. So we'll do some trivia questions here. And I got something here for show and tell. It's relating to one of my videos here. So I'll bring that up. Alrighty. So again, the categories on the old 1990s Trivial Pursuit deal here. The categories are drivers, NASCAR, pits, teams, tracks, drivers, and the wild card. For some reason, it messes me up if I don't read like the first one in the category as NASCAR, because then after that, it's like, wait, did I say all of them? I'll probably end up reading it 3 times over. But again, NASCAR, pits, teams, tracks, drivers, and the wild card. So go ahead and mention in the chat here which category you'd like. I'll kind of check the chat here for other storylines from this here as well to definitely bring up. Yeah, people seem not happy with the race. Again, I thought it was solid. And I think Monday races are kind of interesting because you have kind of that complexion where usually the weather's a lot better. It's a lot different. Handling is kind of an issue. So I think that's kind of another way to look at it there. Let me just check on this here. Just made it back to the car. All right, right on. Just hearing from Last Bro here at the same time. Yeah, upper 80s with clouds, very humid, he says, over at the track. Just text him here. Big thanks to him. I asked him to pick up a track car here, and he got one of those, so big thanks to him on that. Oh, that doesn't really show very well on camera. Does it... It's white on a white background, so it's a little hard to see there. Let's see. That's probably not the best. There you go. A little better there. So that's pretty cool. Awesome. Well, we'll do so we'll do trivia here in a sec. I see people already picking the categories here. Here's one thing I brought out there. This is actually relating to the Chuck Bound video. This is probably out of all the programs I've collected over the years, and they didn't have programs this weekend at the track. I guess they're really kind of going out of style, which is too bad. They're always a fascinating glimpse into the time period for like different races that happened in the past. But this right here is the program to the 1994 race at Sears Point. This is one I always remember. I've leafed through this so many times. The corners are all wound up on us really so much. But I probably looked at each one of these ads and pictures so often. This is a season that really stands out to me because this was a year that you had a lot of different teams and a lot of different drivers to kind of work their way into the sport. And among those was Chuck Bound, who comes up in this program here. It's got, if you want to see how different of a time, well, actually, let me show you this artwork again, first of all. Just a beautiful picture here that was done on the cover. Doing this artwork here showing Bill Elliott and Dale Earnhardt taking the green flag there. Also showing a little bit different aspect here of the sport. How about, anybody remember Joe Camel? The old Smokin' Joe's number 23. So, right on the inside of the front cover, you got something pretty different from this. 700 camels smoking under one hood. There you go. But yeah, I think that's probably it. I think I've always liked like the old ads in this. It's got a feature on John Andretti getting into the Cup Series. Where is it? Let's see. Oh, here we go. There's old Jeff Gordon ad in here, right on the eve of his first win. Because this is back when Sears Point was in early May. I think that's another reason I brought this out. May 12th through the 15th in 1994. So this was Green Sonoma era, which is something that may or may not be coming back. We're hearing a lot of rumblings about the schedule. I haven't heard anything more than anybody else has here, but we'll find out if that's the case. Certainly with NASCAR telling people to check to make sure they got their passports in order, that opens a lot of eyes there too, especially given how much we enjoyed covering the action over at Mosport a couple of years ago. But this one here, yeah, I've always enjoyed like a lot of the old ads in here. I thought I had an entry list sheet in here, but there's a different like color scheme for like each of the driver profiles. So you have like you have a Dale Earnhardt feature. Here's a Morgan Shepherd feature with a nice full body, full page picture here of Morgan pulling off the victory at Atlanta, which turned out to be the last of his career. There's Brett. See, and they got the adjoining ads next to each one of them. So you got Brett Bodine here, the year he finished second in the Brickyard 400. Here's another Smokin' Joe's one here for Hut Strickland. Lots of great ones. We talk about Joe Nemechek. Here we go. Here's Joe back during his rookie season for Larry Hedrick when he took the Meineke sponsor over there to the number 41 team. 41 car always had gorgeous paint jobs. Oh, and this one here, I probably pulled this page open more than any. Always was very, very much enjoyed Michael Waltrip's Pennzoil car. I think I mentioned it in 500 Days. I remember flipping over to this a lot. And again, talk about the anticipation of the Brickyard 400. So this was printed in May. The Brickyard was in August. And you got like this ad for right here. Let Pennzoil put your backside trackside for the Brickyard 400. So a contest for two tickets to the race there. On August 6, 1994, including actually 10 sets of tickets. Wow, many will enter, few will win, not just one will win. 1,004, let's see, other prizes, Brickyard 400 t-shirts, 2,000 collector pins, and 1,000 bottles of Gum Out Extra Fuel Injector Cleaner. So there you go. At the very least, you can pour that in your engine. So there you go. Oh, here we go. You want to see Wally Dollevac with a goatee? There you go. Back when he drove for Petty Enterprises for just the first half of the season, ultimately was swapped out there for John Andretti in August of that year. So again, a lot of fun profiles in here. You got Harry Gant for his retirement tour. I mean, it was just a ton of different storylines that season. Let's see. You got Ernie Irvin, of course. So after he won in 1992, ended up pulling off that win in 1994. But here's a connection to the project here. There's multiple pages of like the Winston Cup drivers, just like little headshots. And on this page here, this is like the sixth and last page. right there is old Chuck Bound. And in my mind's eye, I remembered him wearing the black uniform like he did for Bobby Allison. But in this, he's actually wearing his Busch Series uniform. And of course, right next to you have Jeff Burton here and Ward Burton still wearing Busch Series caps from the previous season. So I'm sure 1993 photos used in this case. You even have Rick Corelli in there when he was going for Rookie of the Year long before he became, is he still Eric Jones's spotter? He was, but he drove for Gibbs. But yeah, you have him in the mix there. Derek Cope, of course, the last place finisher of the 1994 race at Sears Point after the tangle with John Krebs. You got Steve Grissom in there too. So yeah, but yeah, I remember Chuck Bound's name standing out, and you'll see another reason why in the video itself. I'm very excited to get this one together, and Brian Holman has sent me at least like 4 batches of pictures for this one. For some reason, I think it caught his attention too, both in his photography career and the other photographers he's worked with on the archives. So I think that's going to be a very good video. I'm probably going to prioritize that one because I think that one will come together quicker than 500 Days or the Field Fillers. Although I think once they're recorded, they'll probably take about a similar amount of time. So hopefully we'll get that going. And then on the back, you got the old Mountain Dew ad on there. So yeah, so this is probably a program I've leafed through more than any other in the collection here. And again, just a beautiful cover art here on this one. But the old Save Mart Supermarkets 300 on that. So let's see here. Which category we want? Is it wild card the leader? I'm seeing a few for wild card. Yeah, we'll find out. I don't think Lastbro did autographs, no tires, just gas. He's not really big into autographs that much, but sometimes he had. I think the last one he did when I was covering Darlington, he was, of course, he does the fan aspect of it there, so he has access to all that. He got Corey LaJoie's autograph on a program. He wanted LaJoie to sign it over Earnhardt's face on the cover, and he wouldn't do it. So that was pretty fun. But yeah. So there we go. Alrighty. So yeah, we'll do wild card for a couple questions here, and we'll have that just kind of be the show for today. But thanks again for tuning in, especially on a Monday here. And depending on where your location is, this may or may not be the easiest time of day there for these here. But again, we'll do this for today here. If you have any other questions that I haven't covered from the week in racing here, definitely make sure to ask, and we'll cover that too. All right, here we go. First question here, folks. What did people call young Everett Owens because his hair was so white? This is the first question. In the wild card category, what did people call young Everett Owens because his hair was so white? Let's get a drop in our text here to... Sounds like you had a good time. Boop. So not too harsh in the stands. Okay, that's good. Yeah, sounds like it was. This is a track we might actually do some coverage at one of these days. So this is a good exploratory trip. This is kind of similar to how we started doing the races at Phoenix a while back, because Lastbro did a trip kind of himself down there, and figured out it was, we'll just make it workable. So that was kind of where we started there. So maybe we'll start doing stuff with that. It's about as far as you can get from here at Last Car headquarters as you can get and still be in the U.S., at least where a racetrack is for the Cup Series. What did people call young Everett Owens because his hair was so white? We got several guesses for Cotton. And we got the answer is indeed Cotton Owens. Correct. The famous team owner and driver in the sport. Cotton Owens. Alrighty, next question. Who became General Motors Executive Director of Motorsports in 1991? There's a throwback question. Who became General Motors Executive Director of Motorsports in 1991? Don't look it up. Try to guess it there. And we'll do that here, folks. Who became General Motors Executive Director of Motorsports in 1991? Is John Hunter the favorite for the 19 ride if Truex decides to hang it up? It's possible. It's certainly possible. I think he's a great candidate for it. And if if Nemechek wins the championship, that's only going to help his stock for sure. I just don't see Truex going anywhere. I think he seems like he's got at least a few more years in him. And his crew chief is young, and they get along great. They got a great thing going over there. They may not be a team that's going to win 7 or 8 races, but you're able to win 2 or 3. You're going to be good enough to stay in it for sure. I mean, given how good he is at Dover and how good he is at Sears Point, and I anticipate he'll be in the mix at Watkins Glen. We'll find out. So we'll find out. You saw a new Mission Impossible no tires, just guys. Last Bro saw that too on his trip. I haven't seen it yet. I may have to check it out. I hear it's pretty good. I liked all the other ones. I mean, even the ones people don't like, I kind of like those. It hits. I like a good popcorn movie. Let me tell you, you can tell. Who became General Motors Executive Director of Motorsports in 1991 is the question. No idea. Yeah, I don't know either. Don Hawk, Richard Childress, Ray Evernham, Harley Earl. Yeah, who knows? This is a good one. I don't know either. I really don't. Who became General Motors Executive Director of Motorsports in 1991? I think Don Hawk was the representative for Ford Motorsports, because I believe he came up in... Well, no, it wouldn't be Ford, because he was with Earnhardt. I was thinking back to the Andy Belmont video, but they worked something out there where he was a Ford, but it was still like a Chevy thing. All right, here we go. Who became General Motors Director of Motorsports in 91? The answer is Herb Fischel. Herb Fischel is the correct answer. Fischel. That's a new one on me. I would not have guessed that. Herb Fischel is the correct answer. Yeah, Bunky Knudsen. Yeah, anybody could have guessed anything. This is one where maybe a guess would have been probably closer than knowing it. So who knows? Alrighty. Looking at your comment earlier, Turbo 14. Yeah, I think the truck race showed everybody that racing in rain is just silly and frustrating for the drivers and fans. Yeah, I agree. I mean, that Martinsville race was messy, and it did tear up a bit of equipment, and it also put some drivers that would have been doing pretty well, pretty far out of sorts. I mean, at the road courses, those are already pretty treacherous. I thought Mid-Ohio was a fantastic race last week. I thought it felt almost like a much longer experience than it was, and it already was pretty long. But yeah, that's a really hard question. Yeah, it is. We got to be getting to like the red level questions, the S tier questions here at this point. Here we go. Next question. What track owner received the Buddy Schumann Award in 1997? What track owner received the Buddy Schumann Award in 1997? Blake Thiemann, thanks for joining. Thank you for tuning in here on your break. I appreciate it. Yeah, we're just going to do a couple more questions and we'll probably wrap up for the day. So hopefully the rest of your break, you can see the first part of the show. What track owner received the Buddy Schumann Award in 1997 is the question. Herb hired Smokey Yunick to make the GM cars fast. I didn't know that. That would make sense. Unless you're joking. I mean, with Smokey Yunick, it's hard to tell what's a joke and what isn't. The man lived an extraordinary life. Oh, that reminds me. I got to check my notes, too. Got a couple other points that I can hit on. Doot. What track owner received the Buddy Schumann Award in 1997? I didn't mention this in the Atlanta show last week, but I thought it was really cool when they had the person that did the command to start engines for the Xfinity race mentioned Chocolate Myers and him ringing the bell there to conclude his cancer treatment. Besides maintenance treatment there going forward. Fantastic news from him. I mean, that's great. I mean, talk about another piece of the sports history, not just the Myers family, but of course his history with with Richard Childress Racing and being the gas man for Dale Earnhardt. Kudos to him, and hope he's recovering well. I also want to give a shout out to Stephen Malozzi, the Outback Steakhouse, the waiter turned race car driver here. Big fan of him. Really enjoyed seeing him come through the ranks. Hated to write about him finishing last at Martinsville. We talked about the Martinsville race earlier this year. But hoping to see him in the next couple of weeks here competing in the Truck Series. We'll see how the entry lists look on that end. Understand that his father is doing better with his latest test that came through. So that was fantastic news. So kudos to him. And finally, another bit of positive news that came up this last few days was Matt Tifft getting back behind the wheel of a late model. First time he's been behind the wheel of a race car, apparently, since the seizure he suffered at Martinsville in 2019. That put him back out of the car. He's since been the team owner over at the Live Fast Motorsports effort. So good to see on that front. So a lot of positive news these last couple of weeks here. There's been a lot of that. There's also been a lot of hot takes these last couple of weeks. The two primary ones that seem to be dominating the news these last few days was, first of all, the length of races. There's a lot of talk after Atlanta about making races shorter. It seemed like the discussion was targeted much more towards super speedway races and not wanting people to ride around for 500 miles and just have 10 laps of crash after crash at the finish. Simple answer to that one, no. I don't think we need to have shorter races. I think it should be more, I think if you have good competitive racing, it shouldn't matter what the race length is. It's going to keep people interested. The trick with the Cup Series is that it should be the most supreme level of challenge for the drivers in the field. It should be the longest races, the hardest cars to drive, the most horsepower, which needs to come back, and just the most supreme challenge. I mean, you have the best drivers in there too. I think that's another part of that challenge there at the same time. The other question was the discussion over practice. Steve Letarte coming out and saying like, "Oh, we don't really need practice," and the small teams should want the big teams to not have practice because they're going to be able to close the gap. Well, this past week showed us examples where that's not a good idea, because you can have teams that are small teams where maybe something is seriously wrong with the car that they can't fix in practice, and either they don't qualify for the race or they start the race and then lose 15 laps at the beginning of the event because they're trying to fix it. We saw those with Mason Maggio at Atlanta last week with the wheel spacer and the electrical issues that team had. Could have easily diagnosed that in a 1-hour practice session, and they wouldn't have had to lose all those laps in the race and have a good running car that's hopelessly out of contention. Same thing happened with Raja Carruth and Greg Van Alst in the Xfinity Series race. Mechanical issues on both those cars. For a 3-car team, the Alpha Prime guys got to make sure that their cars are up to speed, and they just simply don't have the time to do it. And there's issues that both these cars have. I believe, that Wiggins clamp probably wouldn't have popped out of Carruth's car, and Greg Van Alst probably wouldn't have lost all those laps with brake issues so early in the race. So there are casualties to not having practice out there. And even Brad Keselowski chimed in and said, well, yeah, he believes that we should have more practice. So to say that, and I do think that there is maybe some perspective of the big teams versus small teams, because the big teams are able to do the sim work and have that replace, practice laps out there. Well, you can do that, but you still got to make sure the car works. You can't do that in a simulator. You got to make sure the car is actually working. You can prepare the driver for it. If it's a matter of like figuring out what a good groove is or anything like that, that sim work's going to help. But the mechanical aspect of it can't be overlooked. And that's what you need practice for. You need to be able to shake the cars down. And if we don't have testing, and we still have the temptation that too many of these drivers take to run the Xfinity and the Truck Series when the Cup cars couldn't be more different and running that couldn't be more useless, that really should be coming back. So there's really no need to not have practice out there. It's just a vestige left over from 2020 that NASCAR has been very reluctant to make a change on, and they should just bring it back. They brought back qualifying, thankfully, but now they got to bring back practice. Bring back that too. Does it mean they have to have 3-4 hours of practice? No, of course not. But they should at least have a couple hours to shake it down. And also give fans some more bang for their buck. It's already hard enough for people in the stands to follow what's happening during qualifying with multiple rounds and multiple cars on the track. I'm glad a lot of that has gone away, although it's still there, the road courses, which I'm not crazy about. Because I think road course qualifying with single car qualifying was some of the most compelling drama you could see. Watch some of that old stuff at Sears Point and Watkins Glen. You'll see some interesting action out there. But practice is the other part that needs to come back. So I think, quite honestly, both those debates were kind of silly. I mean, they come up time for time for people that are either, are just bored by things that are interesting in the sport. If you're bored by practice, or if you're bored by the length of a race, maybe this isn't the sport for you. Maybe go into Formula One that has short races and limited practice. If that's going to be your thing, okay, great. But that shouldn't be what NASCAR is, because there's too much stuff that can go haywire. You still have big teams and small teams that are affected by these things differently. You're not going to be able to legislate that away. You can have 5 Hendrick cars be the only cars out there, and there's going to be one of those cars that's going to have more problems than the others. That's just the way it's going to be. So you may as well bring it back, and I think that's going to be another part to look at. So going back into the question here again, what track owner received the Buddy Schumann Award in 1997? I guess is for Bruton Smith and others here. Let's see what the answer is. The answer is Paul Sawyer. Paul Sawyer is the correct answer. So there you go. I'm trying to remember. That's Martinsville, isn't it? Or is that Wilkesboro? Well, that's 97 would be after it. I'm going to have to look that up. Because I know that sounds familiar. I don't think it's Darlington, is it? Virginia Hall of Fame. Okay, so Martinsville or garage full of Richmond. Okay, Richmond. Okay, not Martinsville. At least the Fairgrounds Raceway in Richmond. Okay, there you go. I had to look that one up. Yeah. Okay. Well, there you go. So the Buddy Schumann Award. And that was well after the reconfiguration. It's kind of interesting it was that much later. I wonder why. But that would be another one to see. Alrighty. So we'll do one more question here to wrap up here for the evening. And here we go. Last question for the evening here, folks, or the afternoon, I guess, for most of you. It's 1:30 here on the NASCAR headquarters. Last question for today. What NASCAR Winston Cup champ was once the promoter for the Hickory Motor Speedway? The question is, what NASCAR Winston Cup champ was once the promoter for Hickory Motor Speedway? Hickory. Austin Foster, you go to your first F1 race in October. Ah, very cool. Very cool. Alrighty. So, let's go here. What NASCAR Winston Cup champ was once the promoter for Hickory Motor Speedway? I guess it's for Ned Jarrett. Josh Berry, not quite, a little bit early. Jeff Gordon, Cale Yarborough. Because of the repave. It could be that, Willie B. Good guess. Good guess. What NASCAR Winston Cup champ was once the promoter for Hickory Motor Speedway is the question. Alrighty. What NASCAR Winston Cup champ once the promoter for Hickory Motor Speedway? Last question of the day. We do have the code red on hand. Alrighty. Okay. One more time. We got several guesses for Jarrett. Let's see if that's the one. What NASCAR Winston Cup champ was once the promoter for Hickory Motor Speedway? And you guys are correct. You're too good. The answer is indeed Ned Jarrett. Ned Jarrett is the answer. So very good. Very good. Well, let me take a little more look here at inspection so we don't have something come through here at the last minute. I think it's still probably on the early side here. Ryan Truex posting a picture there of them at the stands at New Hampshire. Got to retweet this one. That's pretty cool. Kind of going back into the old aspect of history there. It's probably about the same age I was when I was first leafing through this. So there you go. All right. So it's been we're pretty close here on this, but I'm not seeing any results from inspection. I don't think anybody else has. Just checking the feed here again. Kyle Busch was trying a different line when he crashed at New Hampshire. Oh, that's not good. I mean, it's I guess not so much for that helps out there. Alrighty. Well, that will do for this evening's show. So thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in for this special Monday edition of Behind the Wall. The website is lastcar.info. My Twitter feed is at lastcaronbrock. Definitely check out this channel for more YouTube videos. I have 3 in the works, and looking for some other projects to kind of work on here along the way. So hopefully get some more content for you very soon. For more updates on that, patreon.com/lastcaronbrock, including some updates on the Derek Cope book. Have not forgotten about that. We're going to get some more traffic on that very soon. Reached another benchmark on that here the last few days in terms of the title. We locked in the title Cope for the book. The original title was Derek Cope Unheralded, then Unheralded. The word unheralded looked too much like unleaded, and I think it was too hard for people to shop for. So in the continuing interest, with JD being the last book, this book is simply going to be called Cope, and the cover illustration is coming together. It's going to look really nice, so we're going to get more information on that. So have a great afternoon, everyone, or a great evening, depending where you are. Our next show is going to be next Sunday, about 15 or 20 minutes after the Cup Series race at Pocono. We'll talk about the Truck Series, Xfinity Series, and Cup Series action, and I look forward to seeing you here. So have a wonderful week, everyone, and I'll see you all next week.